One. Okay. Hi, everyone. Give me 1 second. Can everybody see the PowerPoint? I don't really know how to use this. Oh, perfect. Okay. Perfect. All right. So, just some introductions. So, my name is Pascal Ruggiero, and I am the president of the Magical Illini, which is the Harry Potter Alliance chapter at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And so I want to thank HPA for allowing me to be a guest speaker in their Small Things Con. If you guys like what they're doing, please consider supporting them. I believe the link is like bit.ly/support Granger 2020. Of background about our chapter and this presentation before I jump into it. So our chapter does these social justice discussions called Fawkes Friday. And basically what these are is that we gather students and professors at the University of Illinois to be able to engage in different social justice topics. For example, we do ones that are about diversity, about politics and such, and how they relate to the Harry Potter series. So unfortunately, this semester we were supposed to do this one on mental health, but due to COVID and everything, all our events got canceled. So I'm really grateful that today I get to have the opportunity to present this presentation that I was supposed to do live. So this presentation is about the portrayal of mental health in the Harry Potter series. And just as a warning, before we get into the presentation, I will be briefly touching upon depression, eating disorders, and anxiety. So I'd like to begin this presentation with a quote that I feel really describes what a lot of people who tend to be neuroatypical feel regarding their mental health. As we know, mental health is not something that is tangible, and sometimes people may feel invalidated regarding their feelings because of this fact. So the quote goes, "Of course it is happening in your head, Harry, but why on earth should it mean that it is not real?" So according to mentalhealth.gov, mental health is our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It is the way we think, the way we feel, and how we act, and it is how we handle stress, relate to others, and make our life choices. So there are technically 7 categories that different mental health problems fall under. I'm not going to read them all, I'll just gloss over a few. So we have, for example, mood, which is an extreme elevation or lowering of one's mood. Eating, which is characterized as an abnormal or disturbed pattern of eating. And as well, we have substance abuse, which is one's inability to control the usage of any type of drug. So for the first part of the presentation, I'd like to talk about some characters in the Harry Potter series that tend to be viewed as more neuroatypical, and I'd like to talk about the characteristics that these characters have that may cause one to think that they are a little more divergent. And as well, I would really like to focus on how these characters, instead of bringing them down, actually help them become a very important, very central, and ultimately a character who is fighting on the so-called good side in the Wizarding War. So the first one we have is Snape. And Snape is characterized as avoiding social interactions. He is viewed as having a very limited range of emotions and being very detached from people. We see that in the early books of the Harry Potter series that he and Harry have this constant feud, and Harry always sees this really menacing side of Snape, and that Snape shows absolutely no sympathy for Harry. And we learn later on that Snape could possibly be acting this way, especially towards Harry, because of the fact that in the past he was bullied by Harry's father, James. And in addition, he was in love with Lily Potter, and unfortunately, he did not end up marrying her. So even though Snape has all of these different characteristics, as well. And even though he seems as Harry's enemy in the beginning of the series, we see that in fact he is actually a very important character and a very large influence to Harry. We see that he sacrifices himself in the Battle of Hogwarts, and that he risks his life by being a spy for the Order of the Phoenix. And um, Harry finds what Snape does so inspiring that he ends up naming one of his children after Snape. The next character we have is Mad-Eye Moody, who is characterized as having this incredible mistrust and suspicion of others, which we can presume probably comes from the fact that he used to work as an Auror for the Ministry of Magic, and thus he was exposed to a lot of very dark things and very dark people, and was trained to always be mistrustful. Even though sometimes Moody isn't taken very seriously, especially when we're introduced to him in the Goblet of Fire, when the Ministry goes to his house after he kind of like files a complaint, and they kind of laugh it off, and they're like, oh, it's probably like the trash cans rattling outside or whatever. We actually find that later on in the series, when we're seeing the true Mad-Eye, not the one portrayed by Barty Crouch Jr., who is taking the Polyjuice Potion, of course, that Moody plays a really important role in the Order of the Phoenix, and he serves as a role model for Harry as well, and he is very significant also in the Second Wizarding War. Next, we have my favorite character, personally, Luna Lovegood. So Luna is probably one of the characters in the Harry Potter series who's most outwardly neuroatypical and has like the most mention of her differences that set her apart from all of the other characters. We see this especially with the fact that she is always called Loony Lovegood. She's made fun of because she tends to kind of think in a peculiar way and seems to be out of touch with reality. When we are first introduced to her in the Order of the Phoenix, we see that, in fact, the only information that Harry has about her is what Ginny's told her, and Ginny's kind of been like, oh, she's just like this really, really strange girl, like she's harmless, but nobody really likes her. And initially, Harry does follow that same mentality that Ginny has kind of imposed on Luna. But then we see later on that Luna actually turns out to be a very valuable friend to Harry. We'll talk later about Thestrals and how Luna and Harry are able to connect with each other through both being able to see them. As well, we have the fact that Luna is a very important, influential member of the DA, and that she helps the DA fight during the raid of the Ministry of Magic at the end of the Order of the Phoenix. And in addition, we see this development in Harry's character and Harry's perception of her in the beginning of the 6th novel, when they are on the Hogwarts Express and laughs at Harry for wanting to be friends with them, but Harry defends both Luna and Neville during this time.
Hi, I wanted to pop in.
Next we have Sirius Black. So
I'm a little house elf from the live stream. We cannot see your slides. We're still stuck on the first one, so I wanted to pop in and let you know that.
Let's see. Okay. Can you all see them now?
We're still in the first one. I'm going to take the slides off.
Okay.
And put them back on and see if that helps. I think they're stuck on the first one still.
Huh.
It's working now. Okay.
Cool.
Well then, I'm going to vanish. Little house elf is going to vanish. If you want to keep an eye on the comments, people will let us know if it's not working again. Goodbye.
Sure. Yeah, I can. I'll like split my screen so it'll be easier. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'll just keep my screen like this so I can keep an eye on it as well. Yeah, you all didn't miss anything except for like a few pretty pictures. But thank you for letting me know about this. Okay. So yeah, so we have Sirius Black. Since he was imprisoned for 12 years at Azkaban, he faced a lot of trauma due to the fact that he was living with the Dementors. And we see that after he leaves Azkaban, that he's suffering from a lot of flashbacks and nightmares due to his experience. But one of the very inspirational things about Sirius is that even though so many characters who were imprisoned in Azkaban went so-called crazy because of the fact that they were living among Dementors the entire time that they were there, and all of their happiness was basically sucked out of them. We see that Sirius holds on to hope. He knows that he is innocent and that Peter Pettigrew had been the one who had killed all the Muggles those 12 years ago. So he holds on to this, and that's why he doesn't end up spiraling completely out of control. And in addition to, Sirius also shows us that even though one may be so-called depressed or may be suffering with from these different mental health problems too, that they can be able to be integrated into society. We see that Harry really values Sirius as a role model as well, and Sirius is still part of the Order of the Phoenix. So he can still have a huge impact on others' life and can be viewed separate from what he had suffered and from his past. Okay. So next we have Draco Malfoy, and there's kind of two different sides of him that I want to talk about that are really interesting in regards to his mental health. The first one I want to talk about is how he loses control in the in the Half-Blood Prince, due to the fact that he is assigned a humongous task of killing Dumbledore for Voldemort. And there's the scene where he's in the bathroom and he starts panicking, even though there's absolutely no threat of danger during the time, just because he's overthinking all the responsibilities that are placed on him. In addition to this, I want to talk about this argument of nature versus nurture that comes up a lot in psychology and how we can apply it to Draco. So Draco's a very interesting case because he is descended from a line of pureblood Slytherin wizards who all succumb to the dark side. And that's what we think he's going to do too, especially in the 6th book when Harry finds out he's a Death Eater. But as we see in the Deathly Hallows, with the examples that Draco doesn't reveal that Harry is hiding, when Bellatrix asks him if he's I believe it's in the Malfoy Manor. And in addition, at the very end of the Deathly Hallows, when Voldemort gives him that really awkward hug and is like, oh, okay, Draco, like, come to our side, and Draco kind of like walks away from all of that too. So he proves that that people don't necessarily have to succumb to their past, that they always have free will in what they do as well, and there is no like fate or destiny per se. So I know I mentioned that I was going to talk primarily about these neuroatypical characters and kind of how they're very positive and fight for the good, and how they can lead this fulfilling life. But I want to give one example of a character who lets her obsession with control overtake her. And I'm going to contrast this with another character who also has issues with control too, and how the next character is able to live this more fulfilling life instead of Umbridge. So Umbridge, who is obviously our favorite character to hate, she suffers with issues of control due to the fact that as High Inquisitor, she imposes all these rules on the Hogwarts students, and she tries to get everybody following this perfect ministry enacted order. And in addition to, she tries to control not only their actions, but also what is spoken at Hogwarts. We see that she punishes Harry for trying to tell the truth about Voldemort coming back as well. And we see ultimately that her attempts to make Hogwarts this really rigid educational institution fails due to the fact that she's dismissed from Hogwarts at the end of the Order of the Phoenix, and that life is able to go on afterwards, and that the students regain their sense of flexibility. And so to contrast this, we'd like to talk about Hermione Granger, who she also suffers from issues with control due to the fact that we see she's very obsessed with school. She's always very worried about her grades. But instead of letting it overpower her life like Umbridge did, she instead allows for certain flexibilities in her life that are able to lead her to fight for Harry and Harry's side in the Deathly Hallows and allow her to go on a lot of different adventures. I mean, I think the entire fact that even though she has this really strict view on academics and studying and such, that she is able to befriend Harry and Ron is really a step towards her trying to make her life more flexible. And I mean, we see that even though she's this perfectionist and she doesn't want to get in trouble and such, that she's constantly getting detention with Harry and Ron too. I think she has the idea actually for the DA, which is really interesting because it's going like completely behind the professor's backs too. So and again, as I mentioned too, she helps Harry a lot in his hunt for the Horcruxes too, and she ends up living this fantastic life too because she doesn't let she's able to work through her issues with control and able to allow for this flexibility in her life. And then finally, in regards to talking about characters and their specific characteristics, I want to talk about Harry. So Harry obviously has faced a lot of trauma due to the fact that he witnessed his own parents dying. He's had to see death a lot at the hands of Voldemort. Especially, he has a lot of anxiety because he is the prophesized chosen one, and thus he is the one who must kill Voldemort in order for himself to survive, of course. But even though he is under this immense pressure and he is very scared and doesn't always know how to completely relieve the stress and kind of like distance himself from it in a healthy way. There are times though that he is able to pick up hobbies. He's able to have friends that are able to distract him and able to help him through everything that he's going through. Like for instance, befriending Hermione and Ron, who help him find the Horcruxes and help him fight off Voldemort through all the different years. I'll talk more about him in Quidditch as well, and he finds that as one of his ways to cope with what he's going through. And obviously, we see at the end that he ends up victorious over everything that he's struggling through as well. So next, I want to talk about Lupin, and I kind of want to take a different turn on this in regards to talking about characters. So instead of talking about his personality traits per se, I want to talk more about the stigma revolving around him being a werewolf and how this can parallel the stigma that a lot of people who are neuroatypical may feel. So we see that Lupin is obviously a werewolf. He's monster sized because of the fact that a lot of wizards are afraid of werewolves. In addition, he kind of has to be locked up to when he becomes a werewolf, and he has to take the Wolfsbane potion to be able to control his spaceships. But as we can see, even though he does face the stigma of being a werewolf, he is able to still be a productive member of society and be a huge influence on the students at Hogwarts. He is described as being the best data professor that any of the students have had. In addition to, he serves as Harry's role model, teaching him how to cast the Patronus charm, which eventually saves his life. And in addition, being an important member of the Order of the Phoenix. And so on the other side, I want to talk about what's kind of causing this stigma. And a good example of that is the Dursleys. So the Dursleys represent suppression and normality. So their suppression of Harry's magical ability really kind of ties into the stigma that we talked about a little bit before too. They try taking away his letters. They try locking away all his supplies. But But we see that Harry is able to overcome their suppression, and instead he's able to secretly read at night. He's able to talk to his friends and go back to Hogwarts, and he's able to reveal his full and develop his full potential as a wizard despite having to live with the Dursleys. Okay, next I'd like to talk about some themes. And also I forgot to mention this in the beginning, but if you guys have any questions during this, since I'm going to just run through the presentation right now, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. And then at the end, if there are any questions, I can go back and talk more about them. Okay. So one of the first magical characters that I like to talk about are the Dementors. Dementors have been really fleshed out in the Harry Potter community as being a metaphor for depression. We see this through the fact that they suck out happy memories from people. They cause hopelessness and emotional devastation, and they always target those that are most susceptible, usually those who have experienced some sort of trauma in their life too. But we see, especially in the case of Harry, that Dementors aren't able to take over his life. He is able to successfully produce a Patronus charm and ward them off from him. In addition, he is given chocolate and is comforted by Lupin and Ron and Hermione after he's attacked by the Dementors on the Hogwarts Express in the Prisoner of Azkaban. And then I'd like to talk about Bogarts next. So Bogarts represent our worst fears. In kind of the psychology community, these are known as phobias. And going back to the Dementors, I always thought it was really interesting how Harry is more afraid of Dementors than Voldemort. And I also think that kind of ties into the quote I said at the very beginning about how some people may feel invalidated regarding their mental health problems because they aren't tangible. So I kind of think that this realization of Harry's fear of Dementors and sadness and depression and such really emphasizes how important mental health is, and how people should be more conscious of their mental health and kind of like seek treatment or find ways to distract themselves as needed. And then going back to Bogarts as a whole, Bogarts are also an inspirational addition to the Harry Potter series because we see that the students are able to overcome their fears. They just have to yell ridiculous and the Bogarts turn into something completely silly. And this shows us as well that just because you have a fear, it doesn't mean that that necessarily you have to let it control your life, that there are different ways that you can look at things, different perspectives you can have on the fear that allow you to overcome it. So next we have Thestrals, which I mentioned before, mentioned trauma, and they are the way that Harry is really able to connect to Luna initially. Thestrals are very important because they also show how people are never alone when experiencing their trauma. Harry felt very alone in the beginning because of the fact that he had been one of the only ones among his friends who had lost his family and didn't really know who to turn to talk to about them. But knowing that Luna had also lost somebody made him feel a lot better and made him realize he had a friend who he can trust in to talk about these kinds of things. Next, I want to talk about a very interesting psychological term that actually was coined in 2009. It's called the Dobby effect. And so as we know, Dobby is a very, very apologetic character. He has very low self-esteem. And this was really brought on by the fact that he was living with the Malfoys too, and they encouraged him to feel so down on himself and to constantly punish himself. But so the Dobby effect basically kind of describes this behavior that Dobby has with this constant apologeticness too. And obviously, we are all entitled to be apologetic. I'm not saying that's a bad thing to be sorry when you do something, but it becomes more problematic if it's like a constant apologizing and such too. But we're able to see that Dobby is able to overcome this by the fact that he is released from working with the Malfoys. Once Harry offers him the sock, and then once he starts working in the Hogwarts kitchen, we see that he's a lot happier. He's always happy to go and visit Harry too. He never has to worry about punishing himself as well. And so he shows that this kind of like low self-esteem that he has is able to be overcome. And then next, I'd like to talk about some ways that Harry copes with his neuroatypicalness in the series, and some examples that we can also draw upon. So a big stressor in Harry's life, as I mentioned, is living at the Dursleys, where they constantly suppress his true self. And he is very conflicted about this, especially after the fact that he finds out that he's a wizard too, and that they won't let him study and perform magic, even if it hadn't been illegal by the ministry too. I'm sure they would have tried to ban it. So Harry overcomes this by kind of like studying in secret. We see in the beginning of The Prisoner of Azkaban that he's kind of hiding under his covers and reading his textbook at night. He goes and visits Ron at the Burrow during the summer holidays, as well as communicates with Hermione and Ron and Sirius when he's not able to leave the Dursley household. He also loves Quidditch, and this helps him immensely because he describes Quidditch as one of the best feelings in the world, and it really helps his self-esteem and makes him feel that he's really accomplishing something when he's flying and when he's able to catch the snitch and bring victory to his house. And so overall, he reveals that kind of being immersed in magic and being immersed in hobbies as well is a way to be able to cope. And then kind of going on a side note, so taking this to the outside world, we also see that so many members of the Harry Potter community have been incredibly impacted by the Harry Potter series. They've been really helped by knowing that there were these characters that had gone through similar things that they had, and being able to not feel alone in the world because of that. Okay, so for the final two slides, I want to give some more insight on the Harry Potter series itself, and also on someone who has been particularly affected and helped by the Harry Potter series. So J.K. Rowling suffered from depression, and she suffered because her mother passed away when she was in her 20s, and she was very close to her, in addition to having a fear of failure, which of course wasn't helped by the fact that she was rejected 12 times before the 13th publisher finally accepted the Harry Potter series. So even though she went through all these failures, her resiliency and her persistence revealed that we also need to realize that we might not always get things right on the first try, but that we need to keep trying as well, and we will be able to succeed. And finally, talking about a person in real life who has been affected by the Harry Potter series. So Ivana Lynch, interestingly enough, was quite involved with the Harry Potter series and with J.K. Rowling before she got cast as Luna. So unfortunately, Ivana Lynch, she suffered from distorted perception of her body beginning at a very young age. She was institutionalized. She underwent a lot of therapy, and she also suffered from very low self-esteem and believed that she was not skilled enough to be a great actress. During this time, interestingly, she was actually pen pals with J.K. Rowling because Ivana was reading the Harry Potter series a lot, and she actually really connected with the character of Luna, and she loved how Luna was this fantastic character who, even though was a little quirky, was very accepting of herself and never tried to be somebody that she wasn't too. So the story, it's a very interesting story between Rowling and Ivana, goes as follows. So Ivana had expressed the fact that she loved the series, of course, and that she wanted to be an actress to Rowling. And Rowling actually offered her a role as an extra in the Order of the Phoenix, but Ivana turned her down and said, no, I'm going to go and I'm going to go for one of the main roles. And then to Rowling's surprise, she didn't find out until after Ivana got cast that she was going to play Luna, the character that she really connected with and really wanted to play. So one of the really inspirational things about Ivana's story is that she was able, well, first off, she was able to obtain the role of Luna. And this actually helped her so much because it proved to her that she could do anything. It proved to her that she was a fantastic actress. It boosted her self-esteem being around all these wonderful people who acknowledged her skills. In addition, the actual filming that she was part of actually helped distract her from her mental health as well, and was actually able to help her recuperate afterwards. All right, so last thing I want to talk about, so I just kind of want to end on this little quote that I find really inspirational. Again, it's by Dumbledore, and it goes, happiness can be found in the darkest of times if one only remembers to turn on the light. I really hope that you all took away some new points about the portrayal of mental health in the Harry Potter series, and I hope this presentation has been inspirational and has instilled hope in you all and made you realize that one, being neuroatypical is not a bad thing. I am neuroatypical for sure, and it's taken me a long time to come to grips with who I am, and also being able to immerse myself in the Harry Potter series and also immerse all of you in the Harry Potter series and be able to take away the successes that the characters have and how you can apply those to your own life as well. All right, so I'm gonna start looking at these questions that I have. All right. Let's see. Okay, any thoughts? So one question is, any thoughts about mental health themes in the Fantastic Beasts franchise? I did a little bit of I've done a little bit of research on this. I don't know too much, so I'm not gonna like claim I'm a know-it-all on this, but I have seen some discussion about Newt Scamander being neurodivergent. Too, I've also seen some interesting themes around the Obscurus. I believe it was regarding how it relates to depression, but again, I haven't researched it enough. But if you want to like message me or post it on the Discord, I'd love to look it up and do some more research about this to be able to talk about it. All right. I think that was the only question that I see right now, unless I'm missing something. If that's the case, then I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you guys want to shoot me a message, I'm on Discord. You can pop on to the Fawkes Friday channel. The Magical Illini are doing, we're also kind of doing this thing with Fawkes Friday where not only are we doing the live presentation today, we also are doing weekly questions about various issues too in the chats. And I believe this week our treasurer Amara, she posed a question about if Hogwarts is sustainable. And you guys can drop in any questions about this presentation as well, or private message me too. I'd love to talk more about this. So thank you all for having me.